everybody, we are back. The PetaPixel podcast returns after our hiatus, and maybe I'm speaking for myself, but I missed this enormously. So I'm back with Chris Nichols.
He's
silent, but yeah, that's his voice. And Jaron Schneider.
Hello!
Guys, I wanted to pod so bad, I went and did the Stallman podcast just because I was getting the twitchy nerves and stuff like that. Right. This has become a part of my week that I absolutely require. So it is great to be back on with you fine gentlemen to talk about the week in photo and video news. Are you stoked?
I ate some Tide Pods. That's still cool, right? That's the thing to do.
What is that? I was sick. Oh, yeah. I don't know what that has to do with Tide Pods. Because podcast. Now I feel dumb.
I guess 2025 is really going to be our year. Right,
this is the worst year ever.
Well, this is episode 1 of season 4. I'm calling it.
Holy crow!
Episode 76 of the podcast. We're quickly approaching episode 100. We'll hit it this year. But yeah, it's great to be back. I also miss podcasting, although I did very much enjoy my time off. I played a lot of video games and did basically nothing all Christmas. It was great.
You got time off? Oh, man.
Well, that rolls right into my question about our little hiatus there. Guys, I'm curious. What was the biggest surprise for you over the break? A gift, an experience, anything. What really surprised you while we were off? Is there anything?
Surprised me.
Here, while you guys are thinking about it, I am going to pop up something that absolutely popped my brain.
You were surprised. I think you were the only one that was surprised, Jordan. What surprised you?
I was incredibly surprised that we dropped a review of a $500 point-and-shoot camera that is one of our fastest growing videos ever. It's doing iPhone numbers, and it's a basically rebadged camera from 5 years ago with USB-C port on it, and everybody is losing their damned minds over it. And I just wanted to be on the podcast what the hell is going on here? Somebody talk to me, but I had no one to talk to. I was alone with my madness.
I suppose it surprised me that the Bluey camera did not as well. We did a funny, you guys reviewed crappy cameras last year that did reasonably well.
It did great.
I feel like we did a better one this year, and it just did not. Nobody seemed to care, and I'm sad.
I was surprised that all of what was I surprised by? Nothing surprises me anymore. I've reached this state of Zen maturity where I'm just aware of my everything and all of it flows into me and it all flows out and nothing surprises me and I'm just one with everything. So I'm just a go with the flow guy now. Nothing surprised me.
That's beautiful.
Pure omnipotence.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry I wasn't shocked and amazed. I mean, yeah, the point and shoot thing is wild. I'm happy to see that the Viltrox lens did well. This is off topic, but it was nice to review a third-party lens that we don't normally review. We're going to try to do that now more so in 2025. We are committing to it, and it was a very interesting experience. And I still hate the aperture ring. I think it's terrible garbage.
Oh, yeah. I watched that video twice. And the second time I was more irritated by the aperture ring than I was the first time I watched it. So I'm right there with you.
Wait till you use it.
I just want to apologize as well to the community. And I'm sorry that I said that Sherman tank had a 75 millimeter gun instead of a 76 millimeter gun. And that was a really big deal. And and that 1 millimeter did its part for the war effort, and I did not show it the proper respect.
So that was the biggest surprise for you, is that your encyclopedic
that I got a World War II trivia piece wrong.
I know.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, ooh, that's very un-Chris-like to not get that correct.
Dude, yeah.
I assumed you had Wikipedia open when you were rattling off the specs of that tank, but yeah.
Oh, I think I just misspoke, because I think it's tough because photographically 75 millimeter would be more common than 76 millimeters. So maybe I was just, in camera reviewer mode. I have no excuse. No excuse. I'm sorry, but
I forgive you, but I can't speak for the audience. I don't know if they'll ever get over it.
Yes, it was terrible.
After the Sherman tank debacle, our views just plummet this year. There's no going back.
We lost so many subscribers, so I apologize to you guys too for that. I'm sorry. It cost us all subscribers. I apologize.
Well, kind of looping back to the point and shoot thing, we are going to talk a little bit more about that this week. That's the main story, essentially, is this is definitely not the point and shoot
Finally.
revival we asked
Get it
for.
off my chest.
But we also have some news that took place over our hiatus, as well as some things that just dropped this week. So we'll get to that. But yeah, let's get started. Guys, it's so weird. I don't have an ad read, so we're just gonna get.
What do we just talk to each
Yeah, we're
other?
this podcast is
What do we fill this space? Yeah, exactly.
sponsored by you listeners. Thank you for tuning in. We're just gonna jump straight into news this morning, as of our recording, actually. So
this is a great way to find time to then like answer all their comments. So there you go.
they get an additional 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the show will cease to exist, but we will get all your comments done. It'll be great.
This morning, our time, yesterday, by the time you're hearing this, Getty and Shutterstock announced that they're going to attempt to merge into one gigantic stock company, which would essentially make them the largest by far, competing mainly with Adobe stock and a couple other small factors, for the entire stock world. The expected valuation of the new company, which is going to be known just as Getty, Shutterstock is just going to be
Getty with one T. We're actually losing 4 T's because in Shutterstock and Getty there were 5. Now there is but 1.
well. It's
I hope you still get Shutterstock like watermarks over everything in Google search. I still want that. Please don't take that away from me.
It's just going to say Getty Images now. The valuation of this new company would be expected to be around $3.7 billion. This still needs to pass U.S. government scrutiny, which I don't know. Antitrust stuff doesn't seem to really happen all that often here. Happens on occasion, but I don't know. I'm not holding my breath.
More monopolies. Yay!
Yeah.
Shutterstock's share price jumped 30%, and Getty's jumped 58%. So
If shareholders are making money, it's going to go through. Don't worry about it.
yeah, so there you
It's going to
go.
happen.
Anyone who makes their money on stock, yeah.
I mean, I do think it's just to really streamline the process of like, look, you want to train your AI? We have now by far the largest library of actual images. So here it is, single license to train it with basically, the largest stock library in the world. I do think that's the direction that they're leaning on going with this.
Yeah. I don't know if
agree.
there's much more to say about that. So it's happening.
Great news for everyone.
Probably. Yeah. Well, here's something.
It's exciting.
Previous PetaPixel podcast sponsor OM System is probably going to release new stuff, and by probably we mean highly likely. Their CEO says a new camera and multiple lenses are arriving, quote, shortly.
Ooh.
Thoughts, gentlemen?
I mean, it's been 5 years since OM System took over, which is quite a long
Has it
time.
been 5 years?
I think it's like 5 years almost.
Hold on, I got to
4
fact
years.
check that.
I'm gonna
4
say
years.
4,
I think they're coming into their 5th year. I think so. Isn't that what it says at the top of the article? I'm going by the article. I think it says that. 5th year of business. So there you go. And
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And so, and we haven't seen that much innovation, and we've talked about this on the podcast before. This is, if they're going to do something, they got to do it. So this is great news. I think it's fantastic. Hopefully what they come out with is not just like a rehash with 3 firmware upgrades, but rather like a new novel camera. I mean, they have a great lens lineup. So really what I'm excited about is what new cameras are they going to come out with to go with those lenses?
Yeah, I think the idea of like a small weather sealed prime in conjunction with like they've had that rumored, mid-range telephoto for quite some time, maybe something to compete with Panasonic 50-200 would make a fair amount of sense there. But yeah, the body is what I'm most curious about. Like if it is an EM10-4 with a USB-C port on it, so help me. I mean, that's the theme of this episode, but I throw my hands up in despair. So this is really their chance. This is the first probably wholly produced by OM product that we're going to see, products. So I hope they really impress us.
Yeah, other than the OM1 series, right? So let's see what happens here.
I am still going to stand by my prediction from last year that we're getting like a 5 series camera.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
And I hope that it's great because OLED System hasn't done anything, as you've said, in quite a while. Now, I did give them a little bit of like leeway here since it takes a while to ramp up production after ramping it down.
Sure.
But we're at that point now, right here. This is like the peak of the mountain. You have to do it. You have to come back down now. Can't stay up there forever. Terrible metaphor. I'm going to move on to the next thing.
That's okay. You're doing great.
A Fujifilm executive has said that they'll never say never to launching a film camera, but probably won't.
Wow. You know, what would be interesting, though, if they made an X100, which is insanely popular, that took 35 millimeter film. I mean, I feel like that would be a no-brainer. Because then you don't have to mess around with changeable lenses and having to, make a whole new mount and all that kind of stuff that'll cover film properly. I think that would be really cool. So are they going to, that would be nice, right? Everybody would buy that up. I'm not crazy, right? The body size is thick enough. You could easily fit 35 mil film in there.
Yeah.
Keep the styling, keep the lens, yuck.
I think we'll have kind of an indication if we see them like really ramping up 35 production, like as opposed to discontinuing stock, actually like re-releasing, reinvesting in that. That's going to be kind of my tip-off point that like, oh, they're taking this seriously. And then I would expect them to maybe move in the direction of a camera. But for right now, they seem to be like really scaling back 35 and 120 and just pushing Instax really hard. So I'm a little skeptical at this point. But they said never.
It's easy to say we'll never say no to it, but
exactly.
That's
yeah. You guys can you can attest. You were there. We went to every shop in Tokyo that could possibly sell Fujifilm film, and I think I found one place that had a small set of boxes of Provia, and then one other place that had a single original Acros. And that was it. No one else had any other Fujifilm film in Japan.
And you bought it. It's gone now. There's no. Jaron has the last Acros original in his
I shot it. It's gone. It's over.
Oh.
The exact quote for anyone listening who wants to hear it is, I've been with Fujifilm for 25 years. This is the UK executive. So I have learned to never say never, but I don't know. There is without a doubt a massive resurgence in film as we see from film sales. As I say, I've learned to never say never, ever say never. However, any business needs to analyze the prospects for long-term opportunity over short-term fads. And of course, we have the Instax range of instant film cameras and printers.
Yeah.
But again, they're unique. I mean, Instax is doing great for them. It's a huge part of their moneymaker. And then they make the film, right? So it is kind of surprising they never did something modern to go with their Fujifilm film. Yeah. You know what I mean? But would they rehash SLRs based off the Fujica line? I don't know if that would be that popular, to be honest. Again, I think an X100, obviously adapted for full frame, it would be a different lens, but it'd still be a 35, I'm sure. But that would be fairly easy to do. Do they bring back the X-Pan? I think people would love that. I know that was a Hasselblad partnership, but they made the glass and there was a lot of stuff there. I mean, there's lots of ways they could go. That would be compelling, albeit expensive, but.
I personally would love to see it, but I know that it's a huge investment.
Yeah, and they made a lot of point and shoots. I mean, they made a whole line of compact point and shoot 35 mil film cameras, right? Like everybody else did. So they've got a lot that they could rebuild.
Just put a USB-C port on it and release it to market.
On a film camera, yeah.
Yeah.
Great idea, Jordan.
Yeah, full of them.
Yeah.
All right. Next thing, over the winter break, SanDisk created a brand new logo for itself.
Hot brand.
I'm going to use to remind all of you to never purchase anything with this logo on it. Jeremy put it well in his story where his title is SanDisk tries to distance itself from its troubled past with a, quote, bold new logo. He goes on to basically roast this thing because I think, and he thinks, I agree with him, this logo sucks. It doesn't make any sense from like a line perspective. Like the S looks as though the bottom is cut off, so it comes up a little bit, so you just have a period under the S. But then that line exists in other letters in the same area, so it doesn't really make any sense.
It's like hard to read.
Yeah, I think this is a dumb logo, and I don't like it, and I don't like this company.
I think it was a puzzle initially, and then they lost some of the pieces, and then they took a picture of it, and now that's the SanDisk logo.
I mean, your crusade against SanDisk has been going on now, Jaron, about as long as the actual crusades did. That was what, a couple hundred years, a few hundred years. Or
For anyone listening who doesn't know why I would hate SanDisk, it is because SanDisk released those really popular SSDs with the carabiner hook on them that were faulty, like badly put together, to where they would just lose your data, just break suddenly, and there's no way to recover it. The company never officially apologized.
Those are the good old days.
Wow, look at that thing. What is that?
Yeah, those are the good old days. There's a memory card holder to hold all of my, there's a SanDisk card in there. Look at that.
That's cool. It's a memory card holder that looks like a memory card.
Those are the good old days.
Before they were bought by Western Digital, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So Western Digital also doesn't make particularly good consumer products. You can go back and find like that whole NAS debacle where the security of their own NAS products was terrible.
It was bad.
Horrible,
it was a bad
horrible.
time. It was a bad time.
Anyway,
at what point can they come back and then prove that they're going to make good products again?
So I asked them last year. Everybody's
gone through these phases where, like, all the media companies gone through these phases where they have bad products or a bad year. And the downside is it really screws people over because you're destroying their hard work, right? Like, that's a real problem. I remember Seagate. I like Seagate drives. They had a problem. I remember there's a couple of years where their drives sucked, and that caused a lot of problems.
Okay, so there's a distinct difference to me between what Seagate had happened to them and what SanDisk did. What Seagate had happened to them was just the percentage of the failure rate of their HDDs, their hard drive disks, was 2 or 3% higher than the industry average. They were just not as reliable over time. So we're talking from 0 to 2% failure rate. SanDisk had Seagate had 3 to 4% failure rate.
Yeah.
They eventually brought that down in line. Their hard drives are great now. And anyway, I don't use hard drives. I use SSDs. What happened here is that this was so poorly put together that the failure rate was astronomically high. They were all failing.
And they tried to cover it up.
They never said...
They just discounted them. They didn't pull them from shelves. They were like, we'll just cut the price and sell a lot more of them to unsuspecting people.
Which is really stupid.
Don't read PetaPixel, fools.
But now this new logo, people won't recognize the old logo. They'll be like, "Oh, let's try this new company called
Let's try Send
it, and we're gonna buy it'll be great."
They tried to reach out last year and say hey, we got some discounts on stuff. I'm like, cool. Can you please respond to the previous questions regarding why you did not apologize or take public responsibility for destroying photos that people were keeping on your drives? And they just never responded again. So the company has never responded to anyone who has asked them to publicly acknowledge this issue. And until they do, PetaPixel will not recommend anything SanDisk makes. And I strongly encourage
cute little
you
case.
to not do it. Yeah, no.
Yeah,
nothing.
I should throw this in the garbage. I'm going to throw it in the ocean where all the other plastic is.
Also, if you hold up that thing, you can see it. SanDisk is notorious for putting the most garbage on as possible on their labeling and packaging. So they put all of their marketing doesn't make any sense. Extreme Pro or whatever. Yeah. They'll have just a wide range of performance. If
look at that logo.
Box of memory cards, there's crap all over it. It just sounds so impressive, and most of the time it's not very impressive. So go buy a pro grade OWC or a Sony memory card and you'll be much happier. Delkin, all those are great.
Glad I didn't wear a SanDisk shirt to the pod this week.
But the old, the old SanDisk Extreme,
it would fall apart immediately.
SD cards
holes in the shoulders.
A lot of years.
All right. I'm done roasting SanDisk. The last thing we're going to talk about today, it will immediately segue into our main story topic, which is Yashica. You guys love Yashica, right?
Sure. We have reviewed one of their products. It was a nightmare. Go ahead, Jared.
Well, they are hey, people like compact cameras. We're going to make some of those. So they are
some cheap crap.
Yeah. They announced 2 cheap cameras that are point and shoots.
The City Series.
$275 and $325. Look great, right?
It's still not that cheap to me. I mean, again, we'll have to see. They're obviously designed to be very basic, very easy to use, point and shoot. I believe the difference is the lens. Is that correct between the two? There's different lenses on them.
Short lens and a long lens.
Yeah, a long zoom and a short zoom. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, sure. It's not going to be any worse than all the other point and shoot cameras are on the market, right?
It'll be better than Bluey, almost guaranteed.
Well, yeah, guaranteed.
We've got a new low bar. But missing the
Type
EVF.
1 over 306. Yeah.
That the people are crying out for.
JPEG only.
I think we're going to see a ton of this in the next little while. Is kind of my anticipation.
What's more likely about these why Yashica made them is because Kodak is like a Kodak branded camera. It's not Kodak. It's someone who just licensed their name, which Kodak is happy to let you do. Is selling like really well in Japan and probably in China too, because they're just cheap, crappy point and shoots that are they have a vibe.
Point and shoot with a flash, man. That's what everybody wants.
Yeah.
Well, now, if Yashica were to make a digital TLR based off of Yashica Mat 124G, that would be hot. That would be so hot.
Would it?
Oh, I'd be all over that. I'd leave my family for it.
Well, this segues into what we were going to talk about, not the leaving your family part, the point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. I was disturbing. I was like, where are we
That was
going
actually
with
the main story topic this week.
So the title of this is "This Isn't the Point and Shoot Revival We Asked For," and I saw a comment on one of on the Panasonic video that I thought I'd put in here as a place to start. It's from Night-Based TV. I work at a photography store in Quebec. I can 100% confirm that compact cameras are having a return. The 3 or 4 models available, G7X Mark III, SX740HS, or even the RX107, are asked many times per day by customers and usually have a 1-month waiting list. If there was no wait, I think they would be the best sellers.
So the first thing I want to state, the title of our thing, this isn't the point and shoot revival we asked for. That really means like we, like the three of us. I know I'm waving my arms and there's nobody beside me, but the three of us, like when I was doing the ZS99 episode, it really did strike me like, pardon me, that what your experience is and maybe how old you are and what your history is with using these cameras really does change maybe your perception of them. And it's interesting because the comments on our channel about that video, which is, getting tons of traffic, they do largely agree with us. And that's, I think, because most of our audience skews a little bit older and have a lot of experience using digital cameras and maybe did have these digital cameras 10, 12 years ago in some cases. So I did, and I acknowledge this in the video, it's like maybe we're just out of touch. Maybe it's that what we want is jaded by what we had. I'm like, this is the same camera that I played with, years ago. In fact, it's worse because it's missing the EVF. So of course, my opinion is going to be, this is not very good. But for somebody new, they're like, they don't even care about an EVF. They've never even used an EVF in a lot of cases. And I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but it's absolutely valid, right? I mean, if you're a young person now, you've only used a smartphone, what is an EVF to you, right? You don't know any different. Having the big zoom range, that makes a difference compared to a smartphone. So anyways, I just want to get
across. What's a young person age in your mind? Because I have the analytics for this video specifically.
Yes,
like,
this is
who watched it. So
I would say under 25.
Okay, then you are looking at 4.6% of the viewership. So you are right.
Yeah, there you go. That skews, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Once you hit 25, though, you get a giant jump to 20.7% of our viewers. So
sure. And that makes sense. I mean, 25-year-olds that have started photography early, they've played with these cameras in some cases, right? I mean, these cameras were out 5-6 years ago. But yeah, man, no, we're out of touch, and that's fine. It's interesting to see the perspectives based on what you've done and what you haven't done and what you've used. But yeah, I mean, I look at this, and I think a lot of us look at this, we're like, why is this so big? Why are people wanting to do this?
Yeah, I think it really comes from our perspective because the point and shoot aesthetic was something that we were desperately trying to escape for the longest time. Because when I got interested in digital photography, like you couldn't get a large sensor camera for less than $1,500 when I first started, right? Until the Canon Rebel kind of changed that. Where a lot of these people, like, yes, you've had smartphones, which are doing image stacking, which really improves image quality, but does give you a slightly unrealistic look to the image, no question, or big sensor cameras. This is an aesthetic that's not very common. And we should really remember as well that we grew up holding like disposable point and shoots with a flash on them. Like that was the crappy camera look when you didn't really care about it.
But we never liked it.
But your smartphone, it's shooting like a little LED, and there's such a movement with large sensor cameras to like available light, constant light. Like strobes have fallen out of popularity, especially especially on-camera flash, this is a unique aesthetic. So they're just like, how affordably can I possibly get that? Well, still, I mean, I'm one of those people. I don't want to go shopping for a used camera if I don't have a background in photography. They want to buy a new box, have a warranty, and know it's going to work. So I think that's where the excitement is from. The other thing that's really interesting, I don't have it in front of me, but our viewers on this ZS99 video, there's many more that are unsubscribed than subscribed than usual. So a lot of people are clicking on this who aren't usually watching photography reviews. They're curious.
Yeah, 58.6%.
Wow.
Wow. Well, hopefully they subscribe.
Different audience for sure. So I kind of had the idea when I was talking to Chris, like what we're seeing here, we've seen it twice this year. To a lesser extent, the Leica Deluxe 8 came out with a USB-C port, but also it did have the new menus, new interface, things like that. Like very basic, but the same hardware, essentially, that we've seen before. And then the ZS99, where they slapped a USB-C drive on it. Along those lines, we saw Panasonic re-releasing one of their larger mirrorless cameras, slap a USB-C port on it. So Chris and I were debating, like, what are the cameras outside of an old ZS80, which I don't think is a great option, where they could actually slap a USB-C port on it and sell it today, and people would be excited about it. It was a conversation that we were having.
Yes.
Which ones do you think, Chris?
You want me to go first? Okay.
I think we should bounce back and forth. And Jaron, do you have any?
I'll see if it's one that you guys don't mention.
Okay. Cool.
I guess I'll start with so I'm kind of okay, I'll put it last because I'm kind of breaking off of what you said. If I'm talking about a camera that should be re-released, and I think this is poignant anyways, straight up, just with the modernization of a USB or whatever, I would want to see the Canon PowerShot S120. All right. These were great, compact, very svelte, pocketable little cameras. But this illustrates an interesting point for me as well. So the Canon PowerShot S120 was basically the pinnacle of this S90, 95, 100, 110, 120 series. And this I think illustrates an interesting point. So it's like a 12 megapixel type 1/1.7. Like it's not a big sensor, 12 megapixel, but backside illuminated CMOS chip. Okay, so it had better dynamic range, better low light performance than even the older S90, 95. But what people want online is the S95 because they love the CCD. It's like there's this idea that CCDs have this really cool look and color rendition, and that's what and they look extra crappy in comparison, and that's what you want. But the S120, I mean, it had connectivity, which is important. These cameras have to still connect to smartphones. Wi-Fi connectivity. It had a faster lens. It was a what was it? A 24-to-120 full frame equivalent. It was like 1.8 to 5.7 aperture, so a little brighter than what they came with before. And they were great little cameras. I remember selling them. They were beautiful. They were pocketable. They had a nice lens. And so, yeah, that would be one that I'd want to see come back.
Yeah,
but everybody's going to want an S95 instead.
Oh, I mean, it is funny to point out when we were in Japan and in San Francisco, all the camera stores had a wall of CCD cameras.
Big sign.
Some of which I know were not CCD. It's just become shorthand for point and shoot camera. So I'm going to jump on Canon as well, but go a slightly different direction. I think they could really bring back the G series. So the G16 was the last one in that camera line. Same type 1/1.7 sensor that you just mentioned there, Chris. The big difference, this is physically a larger camera with more external controls on it, has an exposure compensation dial on it.
Yeah.
But the big thing is this is one of the last cameras with an optical viewfinder, and the frame lines were not terribly accurate, but a bunch of these kids...
Was it 5 times zoom?
It was a 5 times, I believe.
5 times zoom, yeah.
Yeah. On that body. But yeah, the combination of some decent manual controls on it with actually looking through the frame, still getting that pop-up flash. And there's a shoe as well. So if you want to up your on-camera flash game to a whole new level, then this would be the way to do it. I think they could absolutely sell a pile of those things now for like $400.
You know, it's interesting because like, we remember selling these cameras to people in the store, sold hundreds of them, right? All the cameras that we're talking about, all the cameras that anybody's talking about, I've sold them, right? And so it's interesting, like at the time, it was really super beginner cameras were like you'd expect. They're for people who didn't really love photography. They just needed something compact, portable, capture birthday parties, capture kid events, stuff like that. And then you did have a series of cameras for the aficionados where they wanted something pocketable, but they wanted a little bit faster lens, manual control, as limited as it was, over depth of field and shutter speed. And, and so it's interesting nowadays. I'm going to go ahead and feel, I don't know how popular the G16 style of cameras would be. I would love to use something like that. Another also ran for me would be like the Panasonic LX5, these larger cameras that have nicer lenses, a little bit bigger sensor in comparison. But is that what people want now? I feel like the sort of emphasis is they want really pocketable, very portable, and like with no controls. They want a flash. They want to make all their photos look like a Terry Richardson photo shoot, and it looks terrible.
Find a new name for it. At this point, is there a photographer who's not a creep who shoots fashion photography with an on-camera flash? Give me a name so we can call it a different type of photography. Yeah, I don't want to hear his name anymore.
I remember specifically selling SLRs, like DSLRs, and even early mirrorless cameras to get away from that flash aesthetic, right? Because that's the only way you could get good image quality. Otherwise, like these little sensors pushed to 1600 ISO and low light looked absolute garbage, like just terrible. But what do I know?
Is that your second pick? Is an LX5?
No. My
was that
second
just an
pick,
example?
That's just an example of something that's interesting. Like, doing the research on this, there have been so many cool camera designs. The Panasonic LX5 was a beautiful camera, but it's old. It's pretty old. I don't think it could be modernized.
Wasn't there a Nikon camera we were looking at in the museum that was a compact point and shoot that you specifically pointed out to me, and then I...
Oh, well, like the 4500 series and the 9500 series, which are like the swivel cams. I also was like thinking, I really like the Olympus Stylus Verve. That was actually a little bit later on, but it was like a really weird, like ocarina looking camera, but it actually had really cool dials and like really neat controls.
Sharon is opposed.
It's hideous.
Dude, yes.
It does look like an ocarina.
It does look like an ocarina. And that was the time as digital cameras. It was like just Frankenstein. It was like evolution. It was like watching evolution advance by millions of years in the span of 10 seconds and just seeing what weird designs would stick and which would die a horrible death and not have any offspring, right? It was that. But anyways, my second choice is going to be a camera that is a swivel camera. Not a which I say great camera, not a versatile camera, but beautiful. And it stuck with me when I first saw it. It's the Contax U4R. And so Contax was a name, really, it was Kyocera that was making these, but Contax was a brand that they used. It had Zeiss T-Star. It had leatherette on it. You could get like
indigo 2 megapixel camera. How old is this thing?
Yeah, they're horrible. Stupid choice. 4 megapixels.
Yeah.
4 megapixels. Thank you. 2.8 to 4.7. Actually had a 38 to 115 millimeter full frame equivalent zoom, but sexy, beautiful, very pocketable. So you could have the screen on the back. The LCD panel was on one side of the swivel, the lens on the other. So it actually basically gave you a tiltable screen. So you could be, looking above you on the screen, but have the lens pointed down.
The viewing angles on those old screens were so bad. You needed to find a way around it. Yeah.
Were I guess they also have more room for optics since it's a longer space.
The optics go down, right? So you could get a longer zoom range. Yeah. So it was actually really neat design, and it was very sexy. Like, honestly, looking at it in your hand, it was a really classy camera, like nice metal edges, beautiful stuff. Contax, Kyocera, they made some really interesting cameras. None of them took off because they were overpriced and not very versatile. But I think a camera like this re-released would trigger a lot of, nostalgia, but also I think new users would be like, oh, that's cool, that's sexy, and it's small. And that could be a really neat camera.
This came out when I was a sophomore in high school, by the way.
Good Lord. I was selling it as an adult man.
I had that on my short list as just like a swivel lens camera. I do think if anyone brings that style back, I just don't think there's a model you could just slap a USB-C port on and call it a day. It would have to kind of be built from scratch a little bit. That slightly better than 720p image quality.
It could use a higher resolution sensor. It could use a higher resolution sensor.
Next one, still available in some markets, but the Sony RX105. This was
not the 6,
last.
not the 7.
Nope.
The 5.
Those are the big zooms. So they leaned more towards super tele shooting. And I can see the reasoning for that decision. They're like, a smartphone definitely can't do a big zoom. But just looking at what's popular right now, a very fast lens, a Type 1 big sensor, and then, yes, that flash really close to it. I think this is something that people would just absolutely
100%.
be all over. And it has an electronic viewfinder giving you that little more serious, if you want to take it a little more seriously, it feels like a real camera as opposed to a smartphone. If they started just re-releasing these things. And I think they actually did. The RX100V had like a secondary model where they updated the screen on it. But I'd like to see modern USB-C, modern connectivity. I think people would just lap that up at this point.
Yeah, it was a beautiful camera. I would love to have one of those again. Yeah, and I don't know why nobody else has used an EVF design like that. It can't be that hard, patents and stuff.
I feel like it's got to be patents because it's only Sony doing it.
But you can do other mechanisms for a screen to pop out of a box. It was so cool. It was so cool. And I agree. The smaller zoom had a faster aperture. It was really sharp. Yeah, that was a great camera.
I think we should all cry for bringing back, if your camera has a hot shoe and no EVF, please put electric contacts on there so you can add an optional EVF again. I think that would make a difference. That
thing was pocketable. You could take that anywhere. It was really nice. So my last one is really like a dream kind of camera. I don't want to see, so why I left this, I was going to say it first, but I left it to the end because I don't want to see this just have a USB-C port. I think it needs to be modernized in a big way, but that would be the Panasonic GM5. I mean, I love that camera. It's one of my biggest regrets selling it, even though it was a fairly low resolution sensor. I think it was 16 megapixels at the time. It took beautiful photos. It actually really took very nice photos. I love the color out of it. It was interchangeable with all the Micro Four Thirds lenses. And there's lots of big lenses, lots of small lenses, but it was a great pocketable travel camera. It gave me good manual control. I'd want to see it have, though, better autofocus, certainly a 20 megapixel sensor at least would make sense, and the EVF could be updated. But I love the design, and it was small, and it can be awkward to use, but people love that now. And it had great manual controls.
Yeah,
I loved it. I love it, and I think if it came back, that would be huge. I think that's what Panasonic has to do. That's what people are asking for, is make us this compact, pocketable Micro Four Thirds camera. That 12 to 32 zoom that came with it was actually one of the nicest zooms I've used.
It's a good lens.
Yeah, it really was. And it was silly. It was such a pancake, and it was so weird and flimsy, but it was sharp, and it was great close-up, too. I love it.
And not even a power zoom, which so many of the compact kit lenses have slowly moved towards being. I'm going to double up on that. I'm making a sister camera for your camera, Chris, I think Panasonic was crazy to discontinue the GX9. I know it didn't do great when it first came out. This was the enthusiast version of the camera you're talking about, with a better electronic viewfinder. It had IBIS. It had a straight-up mechanical shutter that you could use instead of a electronic first curtain only, and more external controls on it, better video. I just think this is a camera that completely missed its window. It was ahead of its time. The tilting electronic viewfinder, again, I think people just want different shooting experiences, and I don't love the tilting electronic viewfinder, but I do think it would really set things. I think it would really set it apart and make a ton of sense at this point. Again, slap a USB-C, modern connectivity on that. And yes, I would love to see them implement their new phase detect. It's weird that in Micro Four Thirds, the only place you can access that is on a GH7, which is like an enthusiast video camera. Seems very odd to me.
Panasonic was a little late to the USB-C party, I remember. Yeah, they were. They held on to the old mount for quite a while.
All of their their early stuff. I'm going to throw one more out. It's not something I think they should release. Period. I think this is a bad idea. But if Fujifilm wants to make a ton of money releasing a bad camera into the market right now, bring out the X70 again, slap a USB-C port on it. It was a fixed lens, 28 millimeter APS-C camera that was very affordable and could not autofocus for a damn. And that's why I don't think they should just straight up re-release it. But they could take this same basic design, put modern autofocus on it, and price it for like $800, and they would have an absolute winner. Everyone would buy it while they're waiting for an X100VI, as long as they kept that pop-up flash on there. So, Go ahead, Fuji.
Well, that was what I was gonna say. Is I think I like the FinePix cameras. I like several FinePix cameras from the past. I think I like the design of the E series, like the E55. 550 E550 and then I have an A series one in my possession still, one of the early ones, but I can't remember what it was. I had this camera in my hand when I was in Japan as a kid, and a friend of mine who was with me also had a Fujifilm point and shoot, but his was like svelter and thinner. It was definitely like more advanced than the one that I had, and it was more squared off. And it just like had the nicest, most like it had a almost luxurious feel by comparison to the one that I had, which was like a full plastic body. His felt like it had some aluminum in it, but mine was not pocketable because it was a thick, beefy boy. But his was. So like I kind of like the idea of going back to like one of those thinner ones. It does have a zoom lens, but it doesn't need to be a crazy zoom for me to be happy with it. That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, F30, F50s from Fujifilm with those super CCD sensors. Those were really cool too. They could be either better in low light, higher resolution, or have more dynamic range. It had 3 different options for how the sensor would be read out, and it was cool tech.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, we can move on here, but like, you know, this person, Night-Based TV, they were talking about cameras like the G7X Mark III, the SX740HS, like these are actually fairly modern point and shoots. Like these are at the end of the era, so to speak. Like this is when point and shoots weren't cool anymore and mirrorless was taken over. And actually we reviewed these, Jordan, didn't we? I mean, way back in the day, but we reviewed, maybe not the SX740, but certainly the
G7X too.
Yeah, the G7X cameras. And again, they were great. They were really nice compact cameras with good lenses. You know, this is where they were trying to push larger sensors into bigger bodies to try to give the enthusiasts a little bit more capability. You know, this is also where you start getting into the DP Merrills and stuff like that from Sigma. And so, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing, but it's funny that people really want to go way back. You know, they don't want to just rehash something 5 years ago they want to go way back. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
It's funny.
It seems like all the companies are making point and shoots now. Like, is this trend going to continue?
Becca certainly seems to think so. She thinks
the two main examples we have are both technically Panasonic developments, right?
Right.
So
sure,
that should definitely be considered. But I mean, you talk about people not wanting the old stuff. I was just at the camera store and they were like, if we could just get a crate of G7X cameras right now, it would be our best week in sales ever, because everyone's just coming asking for these recently, like the last of the currently in production point and shoots.
It's just so funny. Like I remember specifically the camera store. I don't know if it was exactly the SX740, but it was one of those cameras. And the camera store got in like 40 or 50 units. They were all like refurb or like really low discounted prices, right? Factory refurbs and stuff. And we were trying to clear them out and they were not going that quick. And now it's so weird. If you brought those in, they would be like, and put them on Instagram like one
and
day
flipped
later.
them for $500 a pop right now.
Yeah, they were going for like $150 Canadian or something stupid like that. Like, you know, and now they make a killing. It's so funny. Yeah. The only thing also, I'd love to see some Olympus cameras come back like the Styluses, but the XD card is a real problem. So that would also have to be modernized, I think.
XD card, yeah.
Yeah, the XD card really screwed them for their future sales. Oh.
All right, well, let's change gears here, talking about old equipment, and maybe like for this section of what have you been up to? Let's do like a Christmas recap. Have you guys received anything in the last month or so that we haven't talked about that you'd like to like give some thoughts on? I have a stack of things here that I'm ready to talk about. If you guys,
Jordan gets all the cool stuff.
Yeah, why don't you start then, Jordan? Mr. Gets all the cool stuff.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do this as a weekly segment on the pod because so much is coming in that I'm not going to be able to do a full review of, but I have to talk about this. I'm a monopod man. That is my reputation in this video production world. I love them. I've been using iFootage Cobras for years now, and the new iFootage Cobra just came out. It is called the Strike. Check this out. Oh, yeah. So we got a
You have been using that a lot.
Right on the handle here. So instead of having to bend over and unsnap all the leg columns when I'm working, just pinch the handle, lift it up once you got a camera on there, and it'll extend, push it, drop it down.
It's a very similar concept to the potato jet tripod thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's a
trigger-based
handle. And I was talking on Stallman's podcast about this, but I need to use the potato jet in the field. I have some concerns about the stickiness on the legs here, and I wonder how they're going to do in the snow. But I have used the iFootage out in the field, and it's been really, really solid.
You've been using it a lot, yeah, and it's been working well. You know, Manfrotto, I don't know if they started it, but they did this a long time ago with the Neotech series, and it was the same kind of idea. But I don't remember it standing up to abuse very well. And if it took even a small ding in any of the aluminum, it would just seize up. But yeah, that it's a cool idea, and it looks like they finally now made it practical.
Yeah, I'm very curious how it's going to hold up to things like sand, snow over time, because it's really easy to open up their classic design and quickly clean those things out. It's going to be a lot trickier with this. And the other trade-off is it's substantially heavier. So this is something where I might actually be making the call, especially when I'm traveling, like, you know what, I'm going to bring the classic design, even if
you bring a monopod
convenient.
at all, because sometimes you don't.
Sometimes I don't, But for the time being, I can certainly speak to, like, I've used this for well over a month in multiple shooting scenarios, including some really gross and grubby ones, and it's held up really nicely. So far, it gets my strong recommendation.
Chris, what do you got?
Oh, just one?
Well, I mean, we're going to go in circles. Like,
are we? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Jordan gets all the cool stuff. But I use a lot of peripherals. For me, I don't need a monopod. I need peripherals that work. And so actually I've been digging the Lexar stuff. So this is the Lexar Professional CF reader, CF Express Type A card reader. It is just a Type A, but it's fast, it's small, and I like it. I've been bringing this around everywhere. But this thing I use all the time. I think, sorry?
Does it melt your hands?
Does it get hot?
Because there's a lot of CF Express readers that will absolutely,
It gets warm.
Burning down the house.
RW520 Lexar, I love this thing. Jaron, I think you sent this to me as a present, so I really appreciate that. But this has been great. Again, these aren't fancy. These are obviously a dime a dozen. There's lots of this is a CF Express Type B/SD card reader. And for me, anything where it's got combos like this, but it's reliable. I don't like the 12-in-1s, but anything like this, I use this like all the time. It's great. Yeah. So with these two Lexars, they've been really reliable. They have not burnt my hands yet. They're fast enough. I don't need the fastest speed possible, but this is actually USB 4.0 compliant or CF Express Type 4 compliant. Right, Jaron?
Yeah. CF Express 4.0. They skipped 3.0. The previous was 2.0, 4.0.
Yeah, 4.0. Yeah. So, I mean, it's quick if the card supports that. I don't care about speed. I need to be reliable and work. So that's been great. And then, you go ahead with your next one.
I got I think we may have mentioned this on the podcast last year, but Kex, they make like new film accessories.
The sound I make when I cough.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Kex, they sent me this like cute little flash, this tiny little... Yeah, so I don't usually I almost dropped it. I don't usually. It has like a PC Sync port and everything too, so I don't even have a PC Sync cable, even though I have the PC Sync.
I guess we're bringing you one of those too.
But these are. It's bright. Jesus,
is it just a manual output on it, or what kind of controls do you have over the flash?
Yeah, it is just manual. So you got, like,
classic!
Love it. Get in here and check that out. So it's cute. It's well built. It's metal, but it's still light. So I'm gonna be checking this out, using it. Jordan, what else you got?
You become one of them. one of the straight on camera flash, nasty, no.
Have I? I don't know that I have.
No directionality, shadows pushed on the walls that everybody loves now.
Sure.
Well, I'm gonna do another iFootage. I guess it's iFootage week for me this week, because if you've watched our most recent episodes, you might have noticed a little something going on when we cut to the product shots. We have a motion control system again, and I haven't used one of these since the early days of
the Sharknado.
Yes, so the Shark Slider, I've been a big fan of their mechanical ones. They've just brought out their latest Nano, but what's really cool about this is it communicates directly with a DJI Ronin. So the RS3, RS4s. The problem with so many of these motion control systems is there's a huge price bump when you'd go to a 3-axis system where you'd have pan as well as tilt on them, and they get extremely bulky. So here you can use a tool that you've already got to take over that vertical axis on it. It's a really smart design if you're an existing DJI Ronin user, but I feel like the people who are looking at motion control will have already invested in one of these at this point. Now, I haven't done a full review on it because I basically confirmed that the Ronin works, and most of the shots that I've done have just been 2 axes, pan and slider, because it's just a little bit simpler for me to get a quick setup together. But I will be using this more, so keep an eye out for vertical movement as well, and even some stuff in the field. But for the time being, I'm actually really impressed with how the interface works. Chris saw me setting up some shots just yesterday, and it was really fast to get those up and rolling, right, Chris?
Yeah, nice and easy. This isn't new technology. We played with the syrup genies for a while and stuff like that. But this is way easier. The touchscreen panel is really nice. It's very cool that you just get to do the movements yourself, analog, with your hands on it, placing your marks, and it remembers it. You can just kind of do it that way if you want, and it'll just remember all your step points, set a time frame. You can repeat it, of course, as many times as you want. Yeah, it's very cool. Very cool. Yeah.
You'll see some cool stuff this week where I'm able to use that for repeated movements as well. So for the time being, again, big recommendation, but want to use it in the field.
Yeah. So one of the companies that we do really like for SSDs right now is OWC. Very, very cool. This is the new little Envoy. So for me, I guess the stuff that really changes my life, this is the Envoy Pro Electron, 4 terabyte solid state drive, very nice housing, all aluminum, rugged, USB 3.2, fast enough for what I'm doing. I don't need a drive that I'm going to work from like Jordan might for editing. So for me, I want something portable, small, that I can travel with. We do a lot of press events, and this kind of stuff is really good. Not only for storage of files, but even just honestly, a lot of times Jordan and I need to share large files. It's way easier to throw stuff on something like this, go to his hotel room, here you go, download it, and then take it back than even to airdrop in a lot of cases. So a work drive like this, it makes my life convenient. I love the size of it. I love how small it is. They're reliable. So I would definitely recommend that. And they make, of course, a whole series of stuff. I have a Ugreen NAS that I use for storage of my photos and archiving of stuff, but this is great for in the camera bag travel. 4 terabytes is huge. I personally wouldn't even use that much myself.
Which version of it? Envoy what?
This is the Envoy Pro Electron.
And it doesn't have a SanDisk logo on it, so that's cool.
Doesn't have a SanDisk logo. No. One World Computing. They make really nice SD cards.
This is so. You mentioned that he doesn't need to be super fast. This is a very fast.
It's super fast. Fast.
Over
I
1,000.
just don't need. I just don't need anything that fast, but it's great. It's super fast. Absolutely.
It is USB 3.2, so it's not like the fastest, but I think most people would think it's plenty.
Yeah. For my use, it's great. For me, it's the size. That's what I want, and it's a good housing. So, yeah, very cool.
Right on. So I get stuff sent to me without asking, and one of the things that showed up at my door this year was this Ugreen portable battery with a Qi charger on top. And it is beefy, but it has like this little screen on there that tells you how much power is in there. It has multiple ports. It's got 2 ports on the front. One's USB-C, one is USB-A, and then a USB-C on the back. And then on the screen, you can't see it very easily that I'm holding, but it has like the control here, and then it shows you like what each of those ports are currently doing, as well as the top one too. So you can tell like how much is being powered into it if you've got it like plugged into the wall, like how much juice it's actually drawing and how much juice is being drawn out of it when you plug something else in. It'll charge an iPhone like I think around 5 times. So it's substantially large, but it makes me think that man, the battery in the iPhone is really impressive if it's like just 1/5 of this. It's wild to me. But anyway, I like this a lot. We've got a lot of travel planned this year, so this will probably be accompanying me.
Is that airplane compatible? What's the watt hours on it?
145 watt, 20,000 milliamp hour.
Oh yeah, no problem.
So it's nice.
Nice.
It's well built. I like the wireless charger on there too. It's just nice to like just have it sit on there. Look at that. Yeah, it's nice. I got one other thing, but if you guys have more, you guys go first.
Jordan, do you have anything else?
No, I'm gonna bank it. Like I said, I want to keep looping through this.
I got one more thing I want to show.
Much.
I got one more thing I want to show. Okay. So, and I think this is important too, because on the channel, I get asked all the time. So many of the comments are, what bag am I using? Right. Mm-hmm. So everybody asks, and I always like in the comments, like, oh, there it is. But I try to get it as much as possible so people don't have to keep asking. So My favorite camera bag is the Wotan Craft. This is my old Pilot. This is the 10 liter. Okay.
That bag looks like
this is not what I'm going to show, but I love this bag. I know it's probably noisy as hell, but it's like this nice canvas. It kind of gets worn and shown, and I think they're the best camera bags of all time. This is the 10 liter, but they've just released a new one. That's what I want to show. And they sent it to me here. This is the new Pilot. This is a 7 liter. They've had this before, but this has a new material. So it's not that sort of canvasy material. It's like a tighter Cordura kind of looking material. And it's even lighter weight. One of my favorite things about these bags is how lightweight they are. But I really do think, like, a lot of people are asking, these are the bags, Wotan Craft. Specifically, I love the Pilot series for camera stuff, but they make a lot of really nice and sexy stuff. But they also have these armor pouches, and these armor pouches can fit on the front of the bag. You can customize them. There's many different kinds. As you can see here on my old Pilot, I've got, larger pouches. I've got big pouches, which I can put flashes in. Oh, this has got my filter kit in here. So it's really cool that you can customize further. And now they've got Velcro on there, so you can even put patches on. So they've got these new armor pouches coming out. They've got this new material for the bags to make it even lighter weight. But I highly recommend Pilot series. That's what I'm always using. So hopefully that answers that for a lot of people that are always wondering, what bag is Chris using?
I also have these bags, and I will back up Chris here. These are really nice.
They're great.
They are technically what is called a messenger style bag, which I'm not a big fan of. Jordan has his favorite messenger that he'll die with,
which I hate.
Yeah, but I typically do not like. Sorry, I do not like messengers. I've been using one of these. This is a very comfortable bag. I'm pretty impressed with it. So thank you for the recommendation.
It's the weight. Jordan loves his think tanks. They're solid bags, and they have a lot of storage, and that's part of why they're heavy. But when I pick up his bag, it's brutal. Like, it's terrible. And it's not just the gear.
Yeah, but that never happens.
Stop it. They are a heavy bag. Like, they're physically a heavy bag on their own. They got these giant metal zippers, really heavy materials. And so even before you put stuff in it, I dislike it. Whereas these weigh almost nothing. They're so good. And yeah, Jordan, you're crazy.
All right, last thing. I got a couple of Typoc lenses in. I've got the Samara. What
not
did you
Tide
review?
Pod, Chris.
Not Tide Pod.
Tide Pod, not Tide Pods. Okay.
What Typoc did you get? You used it was part of your Chinese lens review.
I don't remember, probably because it was a 35, and so I have this thing where my brain, if there's any trauma, I ignore it, erases it from my memory.
That's how I deal with
life. It was a 50 mil knocked off.
Was it? Okay. Well, I still found it traumatizing because the lock lever on that thing is the dumbest invention
that lock
of all
lever
time.
is still here. It still will lock itself if you're at infinity, which I think is super weird and annoying. But I'm going to use these and review them on film. That's my goal. So this is the 2814. I also got this little guy. This is a 50.
2814 would be fun.
Oh, 2814 would be nice.
Yeah, well, I have it.
Yeah.
You're welcome to take a look at it, I guess. But I had it a second ago. I can't figure out how to pop it now. But this thing actually pops open to be its full size.
Nice there to use from an ergonomic standpoint.
What do you mean?
No, they're terrible. I'm being sarcastic. I hate it.
I can't.
They're beautiful.
I just did it a second ago. I popped this open, and now I can't do it. Yeah. And anyway, it's tiny.
There you go. See,
it's a 50.
Perfect.
So I'm already now questioning my ability to use this thing because I can't even get it open. But yeah,
they're optically interesting. They have character. They're decently sharp. Again, I've only played with the one, but that was the Noct, which is a pretty wild formula. And yeah, I mean they've got flaws, and that's characterful, and they're cool. They're beautifully made.
Yeah, these feel really nice. My main complaint with this 28 actually is it came with a square rectangular hood, and that hood doesn't lock. It sort of just kind of fits on there and is loosey-goosey. Do not like that, so I won't be using that hood because I'm guaranteed it's going to end up in the bottom of my bag or on the street because you've seen me drop
more
other
character.
Yeah, so we'll check these out, and I'll report back when I have developed the film and I'll shoot on them. Okay, let's get on with... our comments section. We'll first get to a never read the comments, and this is one that was on YouTube from Fry13.
Nice. Bad luck.
Chris, could you do a favor for the whole industry and start calling macro what macro is? So macro is 1:1 magnification ratio all the way to 10:1 magnification, and after that it becomes a micro. Any smaller magnification than 1:1 is just close up. He goes on to say a bunch of other important, technical things, but they end with, it is really harmful to deceive people to think that their small format cameras are almost macro when talking about 1 to 2 to 1 to 4 size magnifications. And when people hear this fallacy, manufacturers can use it to sell something that isn't macro. How dare you, Chris? I
know, I'm just the worst. I can't do that favor, I guess. I've just, especially when you're trying to get information across using the common terminology. Everybody says macro. And yes, I get it. You're upset. Companies are getting away with 1 to 2 lenses and 1 to 4 lenses being called macro capabilities. And, even if it's worse than that, people say, oh, what's the macro capability of the lens? But, I don't know. For me, it's like the ISO debate. In the end, it doesn't really matter what terminology as long as you understand the concept. So yes, if you're upset, you could throw this on the list of so many things, like 76 millimeter gun. I got that wrong. I'm sorry. But it's like, no, I'm probably not going to. I'm not going to correct myself and every time and say, this is close up, not macro. Remember, everybody, macro is only 1 to 1, and up to a certain point, it becomes micro. Nikon have been calling their macro lenses micro lenses. There's been a debate that it should be micro right off the bat, not macro. And I'm just like, in the end, I just feel like there's more important things than semantics to argue about. But I understand that a lot of people really love semantics, and they love, everything being exactly accurate and right for the purposes of global speech and communication. I just think it's more important to get a point across than to always be semantically correct.
I think Chris was not responsible for this initially. Sigma and Tamron were notorious for putting macro on their zoom lens. Like I remember specifically the Sigma 70 to 300 macro, which was capable of 1 to 3 life-size reproduction. It's just been a way of saying like, hey, this focuses slightly closer than the first-party options, which has just gradually come to mean, how is the close-up? If you look at the descriptions, we call it close-up, but we do often refer to it as a macro magnification.
Yeah. It's like, and we get a lot of comments like this where it's like, you guys have responsibility as reviewers online and YouTubers to correct the world's ills and be warriors against the manufacturers using certain terminology and stuff like that. And we pick our battles. You know what I mean? We pick our battles. Like Fujifilm loves calling their medium format cameras large format cameras. And that was something where we're like, well, no, they're not. They're medium format, in some cases smaller than medium format, right? You got to pick your battles on what you think is going to be useful to educate people and what's not. And we're not always going to agree on what those battles should be. But I know you guys want me to fight every single pedantic semantic battle out there on the planet. And I'm only one warrior, I'm one samurai and I'm getting older. And, my back hurts and my knee is not great. And, I run out of breath faster than I used to, but I've got swords over here. I'll fight whoever you want me to fight, I guess. I don't know.
We stopped saying inch when we talk about sensors. So for that, we should be on statues. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. We pick our battles. What else we got, it's not like I'm saying it's not like I'm saying to hell with all of you. I'm going to say whatever I want to say, but we pick our battles.
All right. Next, we're just going to bleed straight into tech support. This is an email from MKP 2020. Hello, Jaron, Jordan, and Chris. Michael from Boston here. I guess I should have put his name at the top. That was just his email.
It's Boston.
It's Michael. I'm using an X-T5 for landscape photography, and I'm really happy with it. This spring, I started photographing birds in flight and quickly realized that this is not what the X-T5 was designed for. The autofocus and tracking are inconsistent. I know Fuji has announced an update to autofocus, but I wanted to ask this question in case the X-T5 is still not up to fast-moving subjects. I may decide to get a second camera body specifically for bird photography and short videos. I have been looking at the H2S, the Canon R6 II, the Z6 III, dang it, I did it again, the Z6 III, the Sony A6600, which you have been... which you've also been
so much better.
Yeah, whatever. The decision seems to be up to frames per second versus autofocus. One, I can purchase a camera which is an okay autofocus camera, but faster frames per second and hope I get something sharp. Or two, I can choose something that has a slower frame per second, but better autofocus and tracking. Am I wrong about this? Is there a camera and lens combination in the $2,000 to $3,000 US range, which has good autofocus, tracking, and can take up to 20 frames per second? Thanks.
Well, one of them was on your list there. The Z6 III.
Z6 III is great. No, you can get both. It just depends on how much you want to spend and what the capabilities are, mostly down to the sensor, right? And whether you're okay shooting electronic sensor or shutter to get those faster burst rates. But yeah, Z6 III is great. Let's address the first thing. Fujifilm has really been, have you noticed, like the trend lately is people are really disappointed with their autofocus performance. Video, absolutely, I get. I think Fujifilm still has a problem, Jordan. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but I think Fujifilm, they have a problem with video autofocus staying on a subject and not randomly going off. And Canon used to have that too, and they've largely fixed it. For photography, I think maybe Fujifilm gets a bad rap. I think there's better autofocusing cameras out there, but I think that XT5, for example, is capable of shooting sports, action, and bird photography. But if you want something more specialized, a lot of companies now are really upping their game. Canon's a good example. Sony's always a solid choice. Nikon's improved things as well too. So it seems like those big three have really stepped up their game for bird autofocus, sports, and action. And you want a sensor that's at least partially stacked if you really want to get those faster burst rates and be able to benefit from that.
Yeah, I mean the
R5 Mark II, I guess, would be R5 Mark II would be out of the range, but R6 Mark II. Yeah.
Well, R6 II though it's not that fast. It's a 30th of a second. So that's where I think the Z6 III, it just really stands out. And they have a lot of lenses for birding, specifically those compact super teles rock all day.
Yeah.
So if I were to invest in a separate mount for birding, that's the one I would look at.
Yeah. I don't find I use 20 frames per second that often, but I get it. Just because I don't use it very often doesn't mean it's not useful. And shooting sports and stuff like that, I will push into 20. I don't really go 30, but 15 to 20, there are some situations where that's very useful. And yeah, like you got to get a stacked sensor that's able to shoot electronic shutter without terrible rolling shutter. And so you are generally looking at more expensive cameras. So the Z6 III was made exactly for that reason, to give people kind of a compromise in between the two on price and speed. Yeah.
All right. Next one is an email from Bobby. Hi there. I'm an archer and YouTuber, and I've been looking at sample high-speed footage from sub-$1,000 cameras. It seems that Sony had a really good camera from 2013 to 2014, the RX100 IV, that produced decent 1,000 FPS videos at 1920 by 1080 resolutions. Since then, the 5 and subsequent cameras can only produce 960 FPS at 912 by 308. I saw a review you did for the Sony RX10 and its 960 FPS, which looks terrible compared to the RX100 IV, but still better than the recent Sony ZV-1 or latest, in quotes, RX10 IV. So the question is, why? What was so special about these small point-and-shoot sensors that the same relative size sensors can't produce the same result?
So essentially, Sony did change their sensor technology. So first of all, this thing was not capturing full 1080p. It was up-resed still, but it was better than what we have right now, and that's because that sensor was designed to just very quickly, similar to what GoPro does now, record high-resolution slow motion in very quick bursts. So it was available in the slow and quick mode. When they moved over to the stacked sensor, I think to keep heat down, they moved to a sensor that could shoot consistent fast frame rate, 24 frame per second full resolution stills, but wasn't as capable for doing those short video bursts. And I think they just found that trade-off was worth it. So that is why they've moved away from that technology. I think it's a bit of a shame, but you do need a camera that's very specialized if you want to do very high frame rate slow motion.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of industrial sensors are designed for that kind of application, but just not as much in consumer. It seems like people are more excited about getting like 4K 120 than extremely high resolution, extremely high speed 1080. I'm sorry.
Okay, we're gonna do some speak pipes now. Let's start with this one from Jack Bauska. Let me hit the play button here.
Hey, PetaPixel pals, it's Jack. Quick question. I've been shooting a lot of vintage lenses lately, and I recently got a Minolta Rocore 50mm f1.7, and I think it's odd that it ends in 1.7, not like a 1.8 or 1.4 or f2. Is there a reason why a 1.7 lens? I feel like there are some other vintage lens options that have weird, wide open apertures like that. Just didn't know if there was a reason why. Chris, you might know more about this since seem more about film. Or Jaron. Sorry, Jordan, you're no help here. Also, what are some great maybe vintage lenses that aren't as well known but are still really good and have a lot of nice character? Anyways, I look forward to the podcast every single week. You guys go with me on my UPS route all through Chehalis, Washington. Appreciate all of you guys. Thanks.
Awesome, Jack.
I will say
I'm
this.
the only one who shoots with an f1.7 every day of the week. What the hell, man?
Jack, thank you for teaching me how to properly say Chehalis. I was driving
Chehalis, Washington.
from Portland to Seattle to go buy Gundam last year, and I drove through Chehalis, and I was like, my wife and I couldn't decide if it was Chehalis, Chehalis. So thank you, appreciate it.
He kept calling it Cialis, which is a totally different thing.
That's not the name of the city. No.
Yeah. Anyways, no.
No, you guys go ahead. You guys go ahead.
Yeah, because Jordan knows nothing about this.
You know nothing, Jordan.
So, Jack, the F number is part of a mathematical equation. So you take the focal length of the lens, you divide it by the actual measurement of the aperture opening in millimeters. Stop it, Jordan. You're being petty. In millimeters, and you get your F number. So, for example, if we had a 50 millimeter lens with a 25 millimeter aperture opening, 50 divided by 25, that would be an F2 lens. So, basically, what that's saying is that an F1.7 lens is going to be a 50 millimeter lens in this case with roughly just under a 30 millimeter aperture opening. So, the actual opening at the widest. And that's where that F number comes from. So, when a lens manufacturer puts that F number on there, they're just going by the focal length they've given, whatever that millimeter amount is for the wider opening. And that means that a smaller F number does represent a larger opening and therefore more light. So if it's an f1.8, it's just slightly smaller. If it's an f2, it was even slightly smaller than that. That's where the number comes from. But the last thing I want to leave you with is these numbers that we get. Focal length isn't always 50 millimeters. I mean, a lens might be 48.7. It might be 50.6. I mean, from a technical standpoint, but everybody rounds it just to make it simple. So, okay, it's a 50 millimeter. And an aperture, even though that is what the f-stop number is, that's not necessarily going to equal what the light transmission is. So even though a lens might be an f1.7, it might only transmit f2 or f2.2 amounts of light. You'll often see this on cinema glass where rather than give the f-stop, they'll give the t-stop. The t-stop actually being a representation of the actual light coming through that lens to the sensor or film, because that's something you can actually meter off of accurately. Whereas the widest aperture on a lot of lenses, it's kind of willy-nilly. So technically a 1.7 doesn't necessarily mean it is. Anyways, that's where the number comes from. F1.7 is not weird. It's actually quite common. It was very common back in the day. And as Jordan has in a very petty way pointed out, it is still common today. So there you go. But good thing I answered that because Jordan has no idea what he's talking about.
Absolutely no clue.
No, but it's a good question, Jack. It's a good question, so I'm glad we're able to address it.
Any classic lenses that you two would like to recommend, since you have strong, thoughtful opinions on those, and I have
none? Absolutely. Jack, this is going to be very hard for you to find. This is very much an aficionado answer, but if you can find yourself some old ingenue lenses with adapters, that's some sexy stuff. But good luck. But lots of character, beautiful. That would be a cool one that comes to mind.
One you can get a great deal on that's barely vintage, but I think technically qualifies now, are old Zeiss ZF ZE lenses, which have tons of character, are gorgeous, and I've noticed have just plummeted in price now that people are looking for mirrorless.
He doesn't know what he's talking about. The other thing you should do is maybe get the, honestly, try the Tide Pod Typoc lenses that Jaron's about to play with here. I mean, he's going to make some videos about it, so you get to see some of that. But actually, they have a lot of character. And Laowa glass is a really good modern option as well if you want to try it. But again, you're talking about an SLR for film, so, we'll see. A lot of this is for mirrorless. But yeah, you can get the Typoc and stuff for film.
These two Typocs have pretty normal sounding f-stops, though. Doesn't really apply to the weird ones he's asking about. The next one is a speak pipe from Max.
Hey, Chris, Jordan, and Jaron, Max here. I was wondering, until now I usually just did travel and street photography, but as my wife is pregnant now, I most probably will also soon do some
Congratulations.
Newborn shooting. And so I was wondering if you could give me some advices if I should use something like continuous lighting or flash lighting, and what could be a very simple, cheap, and easy setup which I could use for this. So, yeah, love the podcast, and greetings from Germany.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Max. I appreciate it. Well, yeah, congratulations on the new baby and all the photos you're going to have to take now. Continuous lighting is really nice and popular for shooting young children because flash can be quite distracting. It startles them. They might cry at some point, or at least you're going to get really puzzled looks and stuff like that. That's not to say it's impossible, obviously, but continuous lighting is nice. I would make a suggestion that it should be strong. Like right now I'm being lit by a 60 watt light, which is great for video because we're talking slow shutter speeds, but you're generally going to want faster shutter speeds. You're going to find very shortly that kids do not sit still. There's lots of fast movement, lots of shaking of hands and stuff like that and jerky movements. And so fast shutter speeds are nice to freeze that. So I'd go at least like 120 kind of watt light, get that extra power, get it nice and close. You're still going to want to use some sort of softbox or diffuser, and it's never going to be easy, but I would go power. That way you get faster shutter speeds and more distance away from the light to then shoot that child as they move around in the environment. But good luck.
Yeah. Power. For my first kid, I used a small shadowless LED, which did work really nicely. Second one, just throw a lot of wattage at a wall and let it bounce back. And then it's not distracting at all and gives you a very soft, nice look to the lighting. Yep.
But you need power. Honestly, most of the stuff I did, I look for natural light. Like newborn stuff, especially where the baby's not moving, then you can get away with large windows and stuff like that, big reflected light off walls. But yeah, as they get older, yeah. And we know because we have some of the most photographed children of all time, don't we, Jordan?
Yeah, up there.
The next one is from Michael.
Hi, guys. Michael from Vancouver again. I'd like some discussion about the ingress protection ratings, the IP ratings on electronic devices. If you go to the IP ratings website, you find a description of what the first number and the second number mean in terms of dust and water protection. But when you have manufacturers, and I use Fujifilm GFX and the X series cameras, claiming weather resistance, that's so vague, and it's really annoying. I took my GFX 50S2 out last winter in a snowstorm, and lots of snow falling on the camera, and I brought it home, and I took the lens off and opened up all the doors and took the battery out and everything like that, but there was water around the mount, like it got past whatever the seal is there. My little Fujifilm X100 yes, I've got the filter on it with the filter adapter. Had it out in the rain because it's Vancouver. It's kind of inevitable that you're going to have it out in the rain. And I just can't believe that it's not absorbing water into the camera with all the little switches and dials and buttons and so forth. The things that...
So he gets cut off there, but my guess is why he's asking, why aren't manufacturers giving more information on what these cameras can actually handle?
Because they're cowards, Jaron.
So I think I've mentioned this story before. It may have been in the first season of the podcast, but like I used to work with Dave Etchells at Imaging Resource, and Dave had this same concern because its IP ratings on most of these cameras just don't apply because they wouldn't get an IP rating. They would immediately collapse under the weight of any dust or water, unless it's a OM system camera, which survives a lot better than anything
Leica.
else.
Those are the only two doing IPs.
And Pentax.
Oh, that's right. So some of them do.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them, not all.
No.
He actually developed a different system. He tried to build it from scratch to give them an actual rating that photographers would understand that wasn't based on the IP system. And that sucked up a bunch of money and never went anywhere. So...
Well, when you know the threshold, you might have just destroyed a camera. So it's
that
a
was
really
the main
difficult
issue.
thing to
Testing it was like, as soon as it happens, the camera is destroyed, and therefore it was difficult to get. It was expensive. You had to buy a bunch of cameras to do it, and you'd have to do it every single time. They're not going to do it because they don't want to actually IP rate their cameras because that's much more expensive than just saying it can resist certain things. But there's no consistency whatsoever.
No. And it puts the onus on the company then to do any replacement for damage damages and stuff, right? Whereas if they just say, "Oh, sealed against some inclement conditions," then
with an asterisk next to it, and then in
that
the
was
lower,
outside of the threshold that we consider when you
It is
had
very
that one
vague.
particular Vancouver rainstorm. Yeah.
It is very vague and it is very annoying. And obviously, the manufacturers have a vested interest in making their cameras rugged, 100%. But it's interesting that even the flagship cameras, the ones that you're paying huge amounts of cash for, $7,000 stuff, still don't do an IPX rating, right? They say, oh, it's a flagship. The assumption is it will be rugged, and they usually are. But I mean, we don't have to go into it again, but they're not always, right, Jordan? Yeah. And so I would say the vast majority of cameras are designed to take water landing on it and from above going down. So I would say a lot of cameras designed to take rain held, when they say weather sealed. Again, don't quote me on this. I'm not giving an IPX rating, but we've had cameras like Sony's out in the field and Canons. We've had them all out in the field, and we've had them all in snow or rain and whatever, and they can all take water. Surprisingly, the dials are usually not the problem. The only times we've really ever had problems with water ingress, usually on the bottom plate. So Sony's had this for a while. They might still, but I've never wanted to trust it. Yeah. And Nikon's, and anyway, it doesn't matter. But, sitting in the water on the base, that can be problematic. And water is, through capillary action, going to soak its way into lens mounts and battery doors and stuff. And so it's really meant to take water falling on it, dripping off of it immediately. I've personally never had a problem with a camera doing that. But high humidity, if you have any sort of condensation from a cold camera and warm temperatures, that can be really bad. You're right. Let's just say it's vague and annoying, and that's the way it is, and it sucks. And I wish it was more reliable.
I really hope that we're going to start seeing pressure put on the other manufacturers as we see, unfortunately right now it's OM and Leica, which are very much specialty boutique brands. But I would love to see, just someone get, Sony is the ideal. We get really petulant once in a while and they can just be like, we put an IP rating on it. So there.
Fine,
and then that's going to force
show you all.
Canon and Nikon to do it as well. And I hope that's what happens.
Yeah. But, really the question is, and it's not something that reviewers can test unless they're independently wealthy, because it's sure, it'd be a great video to say, hey, we're going to take a Sony, we're going to take a Nikon, we're going to take a Canon, we're going to take Panasonic, and we're going to put them through a torture test. But honestly, the manufacturers don't want to do that. They don't want to see their camera lose in a competition like that. So straight up, we've reached out once in a while, hey, would you guys be willing to do this? I'm no, so yeah. What are you going to do?
Yeah, and the torture test we do might not be a situation where these cameras are super vulnerable, right? There's so many variables.
Yeah, I know.
The only one that really is IP ratings, and most aren't going to do it. We got two more. Two more I want to bang through this week. The first one is from Nils.
Being a younger photographer, I grew up shooting entirely digital. From a point and shoot to a hand-me-down D50 to now my Z9. My question is, I know, Jaron, that you said that shooting film really made you interested in photography again. And personally, I got a ZF and some older manual lenses with the focus assist stuff, and I really like the style of the older lenses and the character that they have. But does it make sense for someone like me to actually pick up film and shoot film, or should I just use the older lenses on modern digital bodies? Is there any particular benefit that I would get out of that I might not have shooting that kind of lens and setup digitally? Thanks, guys.
Sense of pride and accomplishment. There's really what I'm doing with film makes absolutely no sense. I cannot actually recommend doing it. I'm doing it because it's a hobby and I'm not actually in a hurry to see any of my pictures, and most of them come out bad, and I'm allowed by my family to spend X amount of money on film before I'm told to stop. It's not a good idea. If you already are feeling happy taking pictures with what you have, film just did a certain thing for me because of the way that I got to this point. It just stopped feeling like work, and I don't like it when it feels like work. And film, for some reason, doesn't feel like work. But I can't I can't in good faith tell you to join me in this because it's stupidly expensive and
That's a terrible idea.
you might not enjoy it.
And you found a way to make it even more ridiculous and challenging recently, which I'm sure the viewers can look forward to.
Yeah. I'm shooting anamorphic on a rangefinder, so it's working.
I would also say though, like, so Jaron, did you do a lot of film stuff before?
Before I started shooting like professionally?
Yeah.
Only from an educational perspective, like how to do it, how to do my own developing, that sort of thing. And I do remember loving it.
Yeah, because certainly I think it'll be different for Nils as well in that it's like and everybody's gonna have a different approach. Like my approach is I grew up shooting film and that's what I shot creatively for many years, like darkroom, printing, and I loved the experience. And it's the practicalities that keep me from doing it now. I just don't have time. There's no way. It takes too much time up for me. I have to, if I'm out taking photos, I'm doing it with whatever camera I'm reviewing, right? So I don't have time to necessarily shoot the film as well. And I certainly don't have time to process or do darkroom anymore. And I miss that, but I'm okay with it. But you don't know because you haven't done it. So I feel like the only way you're going to know is if you go out and do it. So my suggestion is you should give it a try, Nils, because you won't know otherwise. And it'll keep you up at night.
Oh my God, don't listen to him. He makes you spend money. He did this to me.
But it's true. You won't know. And look, Jaron's having a great time. He loves it, right? And if you already have older AIS glass, get yourself an affordable Nikkor camera. Like, get an old Nichromat or get an FE or get an FM or, whatever. I mean, F4s are cheap because nobody likes them, even though they're one of the best pro cameras ever made. Don't get an F3. They're hot trash. And just go from there. You know what I mean? And put your lenses on, get some shots and see if you like it. And if you don't, you can flip that stuff super easily on KH.com.
I was over at my local camera shop where I get my my film developed, and they had a Nikon F Photomic, just like what I shoot with, exactly the same thing, and it was like $180. So I guess if you have that and you buy, a pretty cheap Nifty 50 from that era, you're still spending under $300.
I think he already has old lenses.
So I think you could do it. And one of the things that I like about that experience is how the camera feels to shoot. It legitimately does feel awesome to rack the film and push the shutter button. If you can ignore the sound of a cash register every time you hit that button.
Now, I will say Jaron did go more the punishing route because he wanted to use his father's camera. And so there was restoration there, it's repair. The meter is still like unreliable, right? Like there's issues there. I would personally go with something like a Nikon FE or FM, which will have an easy battery source. It will have a functioning meter, hopefully. In most cases, it still will, and gives you some automatic exposure in the case of the FE. That might be a little bit more of an easier transition. But I mean, world's your oyster, man. Go try it and see if you like it or not. You won't know otherwise.
Yeah. All right, last one. This is a Jordan question from Pete.
Oh, is it about f1.7 lenses, Jaron? Because
Hey
I
guys,
got
love the
strong
show.
opinions on
This is
that.
Pete from New Mexico. Quick question for Jordan. I have two Lumix cameras, an S5 II and a G9 II, and I much prefer just the custom settings on the GH6, and the GH7 I think has it as well, because the S&Q has to correspond to whatever the regular video mode is set to, it seems like. For example, if I have 4K 24 in the regular video mode, 4K 422, let's say, and I switch over to S&Q, it automatically changes it to like a 30p frame rate playback. And so in order for me to get 4K 24 playback in S&Q, it has to be set to 420 in the regular video mode. Like if I want 4K 60 to be played back at in slow-mo at 24 frames per second, it will only do it in 420. I know this is like very nitty-gritty, but I'm just wondering, Jordan, if you happen to know what is up with this. Why can't the S&Q just be completely independent and set to whatever setting I want? Thanks.
So I have talked to Panasonic about this because, yes, it is very frustrating. Now, people should know the difference between S&Q and just recording the video clips is S&Q will make it play back in camera in either fast motion or slow motion, so you can see if the effect worked. What that means is it has to do the conversion in real time in camera, and I think that's where this is what I was told. This is where this hiccup is on those cameras. So it's capable of doing it in 420. For me personally, I don't need to have that pre-visualization when I'm out in the field. So I will just always shoot 60 frames per second at 10-bit 422 and just be aware, okay, I can conform it later when I get back in post. Where it becomes difficult is, say, if you have a client and you have to show them an example of that, then yes, you have to sacrifice bit depth. And it's annoying. And it's not the case in their latest, more high-end video-forward cameras. So hopefully we see that going forward. But I don't know if it's something they can fix in firmware. What I wish they would let you do is just shoot in 10-bit, 60 frames, 30, whatever frame rate you want, and then in the playback just conform it to a different frame rate. And then you'd have that ability for your client. You could record it in 10-bit. You wouldn't be sacrificing any quality there. And I don't care if it takes it a little bit of time to process. This is after the recording is already closed. So that's my suggestion for Panasonic, but I'm with you. It's a pain, and hopefully we don't see it in future models going forward.
I mean, largely they fixed it now, right? Which is nice. Yeah.
All right. We're going to end with the feel-good story of the week. And for me, the one I picked is that after Meta forced everyone to interact or at least be unable to block these completely AI-generated people on Instagram and Facebook, the blowback on that was so severe that they just deleted these quote AI people, and now they're no longer a problem. And anytime people get mad at Mark Zuckerberg for his weird crap, that's a feel-good story moment for me.
There you go. Is that murder? Is that murder yet? How does that work? Are we not there yet?
They're not people. They're not real. You can kill them. Yep, deleted.
Yeah, they look so real. I had a conversation with Liv. She was very nice.
No, you didn't.
What?
Did you?
I don't think Chris is even on any. Oh no, he's on Instagram. I guess he's on a.
I don't use Facebook. I don't use Facebook.
With all of these, I suspect as soon as we forget about it, these are going to just start popping up again because it's just a way for them to keep engagement without actual human beings producing things. You can just have AI throwing controversial gibberish out there and keep engagement up. And it sucks. The future's terrifying, but I'm glad we've taken a small step back before another version of these things show up
so
a few days later.
Like,
it's so
the personalities
gross.
they gave them too. This one, Brian is a retired textile businessman. What the heck? Like, that's so weird.
It's so specific, and
You know what, Jared,
just
here's
like
some-
my kid, the figure skater, with an AI generated image of figure skating. Like, it just
stupid. What is the point?
I want to
the
apologize
point
to
is-
all the real human beings out there watching the podcast that actually are textile businessmen and women. I apologize. You are real people, and Jaron should not be discounting
My
your
grandfather
life
owned
choice.
a textile mill. It's not like I'm an anti-textile. Stop it.
He's anti-textile.
Oh my God.
I think that was our main takeaway from this final story was Jaron's
Brian's got a
anti-textile
stupid job, and I'm
tendencies.
glad he's dead now.
But I mean,
Jeez.
This was supposed to be feel good.
He's where he belongs.
Yeah,
deleted in the recycle bin.
Oh my goodness. All right.
All right.
Thanks everyone for joining us for the first episode of season 4. We're happy to be back. We'll be back with more.
Nowhere
in the
but up
coming
from
weeks. Yeah, seriously. We've got so much coming. Next week, the podcast will actually not release until Friday, so we apologize.
But it is coming.
It is coming. It'll drop on the 17th, and then after that, we may have a couple other days that are wishy-washy with us, but we promise we will try and hit our weekly schedule whenever possible. Thanks everyone. Have a fantastic week. We'll catch you later.
Bye.